Morning. It is 11:30 a.m. on Thursday, March 13th, 2025, and this meeting of the Sandpoint Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Committee Chair Kate Huseman presiding. Also present are committee members Aaron Billings, Evan Lewis, Reed Weber, Bradley.
Yeah.
And Bradley Peterson. In addition to the committee, council liaison Deb Rule and our staff liaison, city engineer Brandon Stegman are in attendance. No one else. Okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our February 13th, 2025 meeting. Do I hear a motion? I'm sorry. Did you get that? I think it was Evan moved and Reed second. Those in favor? Aye. So, anyone opposed? No. Okay. Motion passes and the minutes are approved as presented. Before we proceed, for any members of the public in attendance, if you wish to offer comments on any of the topics on our agenda following the staff presentation and board discussion, please be aware that the city has rules in place for proper decorum during public meetings provided under city code and posted just outside council chambers. Let the record show that Jennifer Heller. Please note that public comment opportunities are for comments only, no questions or debate, and each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. We will revisit public comment as we wrap up discussion on each of our items. At this time, we'll move on with the business in our agenda. Maybe members of the public.
Rebecca was, she's on there.
Here's right. Oh, okay. So, but this doesn't give members of the public an opportunity to speak at this time. Yes, thank you. At this time, I will allow for brief public comment. Just a reminder regarding the rules of decorum. Comments may not be derogatory in nature against any individual, business, or organization. Public comment time is at the discretion of the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand, and when you are called upon, please approach the table, state your name, and whether you reside within Sandpoint city limits. Please speak directly toward the microphone, the owl, in the middle of the room. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. Are there any of the members of the public in the room who would like to comment? Or, Madam Clerk, are there any hands raised on Zoom?
And so you have Rebecca Holland on Zoom. I guess she is the one that would like to speak.
I don't see a hand raised, but Rebecca, can you hear us? Would you like to speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, hi. I'm just telling you that I can, I'm on Zoom and I see you and I have,
Could you just identify yourself, please, and let us know whether you live within the Sandpoint city
oh,
limits?
okay. Yes, okay, certainly. For the record, my name is Rebecca Holland. I live in Selly Valley. I call Sandpoint my hometown. Lived here 50 years. I was years ago on this committee. I recently pulled up some of our old minutes and would at some point like to reflect on those, but I'm just listening in today. I'm particularly interested in what we often referred to, and it's your last agenda item that I would hope I could speak then, on the bridge, First Avenue, malfunction junction intersection. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right.
Chairman, I just have a brief public comment. I think this is the best time. Mayor Jeremy Grimm, first of all, thank you all so much for your service and putting in time to these this and other valuable committees. We've been rolling for about 6 months now on our committees and commissions, and just doing a check-in to see what kind of staff time, what are the costs, what are the needs, how are they functioning? What direction are the committees going? Do they need more specific direction from the city council and the mayor? What protocols do we need to tighten up? What guardrails do we need to put out there? So over the next month or so, inside City Hall, we're tabulating the costs, the actual cost for hosting these, for budget preparation, time allocation, and just trying to work through some of the kinks that are natural for any kind of startup. And that's how I view these committees. I'm super supportive of them. Want to make sure they're working, that your time's valuably being applied to the priorities of the city. And it's not unique to any one committee, but right now, they're starting to, I'm sensing frustration from some of the committee members, lack of direction. Some of the committees are really starting to sprawl out and start to go in directions that aren't necessarily priorities of the mayor and the council. So just to let you know, we'll be checking in, visiting with council, and making sure that we're all moving in the same direction, and that the priorities established by the city council and the mayor are what you're working on, so that you're not going down pigeonholes and getting frustrated. So with that, thank you again for all of your work and your patience as we get these committees tuned up and moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. At this time, I had wanted to move item number 5 on the agenda further up in time, because Molly O'Reilly, who wanted to present about it, had to go to present before the legislature at noon, and so had to leave this meeting. But since she's not at this meeting anyway, I think we will proceed with the agenda as written and start with old business. Carried over from the last meeting, we'll discuss the process for selecting a presiding officer for the next time we are holding a meeting where neither the chair nor vice chair is able to attend in person, and I will yield the floor to Brandon.
Thank you. I apologize. I forgot my cheat sheet on this item, but the crux of it is that we need to have the chair running the meeting needs to be here in person. So if the chair is not available, then it reverts to the vice chair, and if neither the chair or the vice chair are available to run the meeting, then the clerk can provide direction on how to select an interim chairperson of the meeting.
And the clerk will just do that ad hoc at that time.
I believe so, and that's the part that I'm not super clear on. Do you have? Okay. I might have to, I'm sorry, I might have to bring that back to the next meeting, but.
More old unfinished business.
Yeah.
So do you need input from us, or are you just telling us this is the way it's gonna work?
I just wanted to make that was direction given to me from the clerk, so if you have comments, I mean, it's your meeting, go ahead.
Anyone have concerns about having the clerk help us figure out who's gonna run the meeting, should that become necessary?
Historically, Kate, I think we've kind of moved down, like if we have an assigned secretary, that has been my experience of the next person then presiding over the meeting at that point.
Mhm.
And then if that person's not there, then reverting back to what Brandon's gonna find out for us. So I don't know if that's an action item we can agree upon or not at this point, but it seems the next logical place to go.
How do we feel about appointing a secretary for this purpose out of a group of 6 or 7? Do we need, we want to provide a third in line, or shall we just go with the clerk helping us deal with the situation should it arise? Any thoughts on that?
I think we can leave it simple, just like the clerk did.
It doesn't appear that there are.
Historically, one of the members was assigned secretarial duties because we didn't have staff here also. So
Okay,
that's part of how that came in.
okay. Well, since I see no particular concern from committee members, I think, we will go with your suggestion, and if you want to fill us in more on how it works at the next meeting, Brandon, that sounds great. We will now move on to new business, beginning with the staff presentation on the Daher number 1 subdivision preliminary plat, and I will again give the floor to Brandon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In city code, staff is required to bring preliminary plats for full subdivisions to the bicycle and pedestrian committee. The code is not clear about what happens after that, but it's pretty clear that they need to be presented to this committee. So that's what we're doing here. We have a preliminary plat that was taken to planning and zoning and approved by planning and zoning to recommended to council. It has not gone to council yet. Moving forward, when we get preliminary plats, we will make every attempt that staff can to bring those preliminary plats to this committee as soon as we have the drawing and before it goes to either planning and zoning or city council. But we're kind of playing catch up on this one. So this subdivision is pretty simple. It is out by north of the airport off of Turbine Drive. Zooming in right now, it's this lot and this lot owned by Kodiak. This is Great Northern off to the left side of the page. I think this was in your agenda packets, but this is the preliminary plat. So they are taking 2 lots and creating 4. So you can see lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4.
I'm sorry, I can't see a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got a lot of tabs open here. Okay. So this is the preliminary plat drawing that was taken to planning and zoning. Again, recommended to city council. 4 lots. This is lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4. Lot 2 has the existing Kodiak commercial building on it. Lot 1 and lot 3 will be 2 undeveloped lots. And lot 4 will be an additional lot down here. But it's mostly covered with wetlands. So it's most likely undeveloped. It'll just remain as an undeveloped lot. The other key thing to note about this as I'm zooming in is that currently Turbine Drive is not a city street. You can see that right here with the cursor. It's just a private access drive to access the Kodiak property and this community called Silver Wings, which has hangar lots and residences that can access the airport. Part of this subdivision will be to dedicate this portion right here of Turbine Drive as a city right of way. And it's 60 feet wide, and they will have to have a turnaround at the end of it for fire access purposes. So that's my presentation on that preliminary plat. Maybe you can open it up to questions if that's appropriate.
Or anyone have any questions about that?
Brandon, my understanding is those lots are predominantly kind of industrial, commercial use. Are there any anticipated impacts from a pedestrian and bicycle standpoint that you're aware that we should spend some time on, or is this more just informative and following the procedure since there's subdivision?
Yeah, both. I mean, it is because I'm trying to follow the code as written, but I can point out the specific pedestrian impacts. Let's see. We're going to switch back to the GIS. So some of you might recall that the city was attempting to get this Great Northern Reconstruction Project going, find grant funding for it. We're unable to, so that project's on hold right now. So part of that Great Northern project was going to change the alignment slightly. And it would have required dedication of right of way from these property owners to do what we wanted to do on Great Northern. Included a multi-use path along the east side of Great Northern. That's no longer part of this subdivision. The other key thing is you can see that Turbine Drive, which I showed on that map, is currently not a public right of way, it's private property. But it will have, once it becomes public right of way, we're gonna require as a condition that they build a sidewalk on the north side of Turbine Drive to bring it up to city standards at a minimum. There is currently kind of an asphalt path along the south side. So that'll be one of the conditions of plat approval is getting a construction agreement in place to get that sidewalk installed. But it's primarily just gonna serve these existing property owners. I know that the people that work here walk down there sometimes. I've just noticed that anecdotally.
When you say the right of ways, can you clarify kind of how you ended that? So the right of way is no longer there. Do you mean that it's not in the plan currently with the subdivision, or are you, if and when this comes back on ice, the plan for the multi-use path?
Oh, for Great Northern?
Yes.
Well, we don't know yet. Staff has talked about possibly since the full Great Northern road reconstruction project, which includes stormwater, road reconstruction, realignment, and pedestrian facilities, was a multi-million-dollar project. $20 million. We're not gonna get the grant funding for that at this time. So we're discussing possibly getting a smaller grant. Just doing pedestrian or just doing stormwater, but there's been no direction on that yet.
But as far as you see, this wouldn't necessarily have an impact on the ability to that, correct?
So if we did move forward with the Great Northern realignment, we would have to acquire right away from these property owners in order to get.
So I have two different questions, same along that, should we, I don't mean acquire right away, but should we plan for that as a part of the conditions of approval? And then the other thing that I'm curious about is the actual road, if we're taking it on, built to the standards that we want it to be built to, because that is a very marshy area. So if we take that road on, I don't want that to become a significant expense for the city if it's built substandard because it was a private road, so we don't know what their base is and all those other things. And then I agree, the sidewalk should go in because that's city standard. Hopefully to encourage in the better weather months, all those people to someday, if there's a path with the $20 million project that they could access for being a pedestrian.
I'll just add, I know that plans have changed and things are up in the air with Great Northern project, but I do think that looking at requiring sidewalks along Great Northern with this eventual subdivision good thing, because especially with down the way with the new project on the corner going up, they're putting in sidewalks there. This actually could become fairly connected area near future. Things being in flux with the Great Northern project. Not sure when that will happen in the near future. There are two avenues that could occur to connect sidewalks, at least partially connected sidewalks along Great Northern.
Is there any current requirement similar to how the housing situation in town was, where there was a requirement where you spend X amount of money and you have to put in a sidewalk? Is there anything like that in industrial?
Yeah, so it's not based on the zoning, or the, you know, the use type. There's two, opportunities to require people to build sidewalk along public street frontages. The first one is building permits of, all building permits, basically, including single family houses. The second one is subdivisions, which this will be a subdivision. They are required to do, curb and sidewalk along all existing and proposed public right of ways before final plat, or provide a bonding mechanism and a construction agreement to build those within a certain number of years after.
Great Northern is not considered public right of way,
It is.
so it could be required.
Yeah, there's the trick is that when we have a capital project, we don't want to require a private developer to build sidewalk for a stretch when we have a capital project going through there. So that's really the question that is going to be discussed when this goes to city council for approval or recommendation back.
Any specific inputs you want to address or anything specific you want to ask us about at this time?
Nope.
Anyone else have anything? Okay. So we will move on to subcommittee reports, beginning with the Development Review Subcommittee. Is anyone here prepared to speak about the development review, or was that something Molly was gonna do? So no one is prepared.
I was one of the members of that committee and I was out with a new child for a number of weeks, so we created a bunch of emails on scheduling the time and didn't find a time that aligned, so I think I'd recommend that we take that action item of scheduling our first meeting and getting the chair and.
Well, we did end up.
Did you guys end up
we ended
meeting when I was out?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
oh, that's okay, I know, I'm catching up a little bit.
Yes.
But Molly sent over notes.
She did send over notes. I don't have them in front of.
They weren't attached to
They
the
weren't.
agenda. This is the,
Do you have?
we got the MTMP committee notes is today, but I didn't see some from the development.
I don't think we got. I know they were in the packet.
Oh, yeah, there they are.
They're in the packet.
So Jen, can you just fill us in a little about that?
Try, or Aaron, do you remember? Actually, you were there before me, so if you want.
I mean, basically, she's just bringing up like when we can be involved and what type of developments we should be involved in. So, and how we would get that information, whether we need to like kind of hard weekly for us to look if there's projects coming, or if Brandon lets us know, or city staff. I don't.
We were kind of, just kind of brainstorming on
How to be involved
How to
in
be better
the,
involved.
like the bigger subdivisions or.
And
Sorry,
Mayor Grimm had mentioned protocols, and that's one of my big questions too, so maybe he can address that.
yeah, I'll
now.
just fill in. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interject too much here, but what we're working on, obviously with the new committees, some new planning staff, getting the house in order, the consistent, stable process. Bill Dean, if you haven't met him, our planning director, senior planner, very experienced, wonderful person, and he is working on a 90-day calendar, so that when we get applications, when they complete their staff reports, or when we get the plans, there's a consistent process where, especially, this is probably the most important committee other than planning, and zoning commission, to review those. So we'll be bringing those to you consistently, and we're just still trying to put the paint and the frame together of how this runs.
So is Brandon showing us there They're an example of that, except he said next time he'll want to bring it a little
Further,
earlier in the
correct.
process. So-
Subdivisions, conditional use permits, PUDs, anything where your feedback and thoughts can both enhance and supplement, our code, because you play a really important role in that. We've got our code. To some degree, all developments got components of negotiation, and having a strong informed perspective from folks with your expertise and sometimes help staff in that discussion with the developers. For example, boy, our code requires this, but you know, Pet Bike would really love to see X, Y, and Z incorporated, maybe new ideas. Oftentimes developers want to try to have the best project they can. So sometimes incorporating, even though it's not legally required, recommendations from groups like this would be very helpful. So yeah, we are working on a consistent process where we'll just know when an application comes in, boom, next meeting, it's going to Pet Bike, notice, staff report, planning commission, council. So thanks for your patience.
So I don't think we were gonna meet unless we were brought a project forward again.
Yeah, we're
Because,
kind of hoping to hear something like this and then go from there.
because like Molly said, like examples, I guess she's seen is where maybe the gutter is draining by the sidewalk or on it, and they just might have missed that where we could maybe
Yep,
catch.
more eyes the better, for sure.
So what's our next move? Does our subcommittee just wait for your planning department to bring things to them?
You know, again, the cake is in the mixer, doing this live, having to reinstate these commissions. It's kind of, we're borrowing from the old and trying to assess. I don't know how the council and President Rule will be involved in this. My vision is that these committees function similar to the planning commission, where you have standing meetings set by the city. And then at times there will be special meetings where we'll say, well, I'll give, maybe we have a large employer who has tons of jobs, and you might not know this, but I'm having discussions with the CEO and they're like, we're gonna pull out of your town. You're gonna lose 400 jobs if we don't get this done in 30 days. I'm not gonna say that publicly and bring that to the record, but that's going on. So I might say, hey, we need a special meeting next week because this is a hot issue. And I need your feedback on this because we wanna keep that consistent process. We don't wanna we wanna be transparent. We wanna make sure there's great feedback, but there are times where we have to, you know, jump at opportunities or respond to threats that require special meetings. So put a bookend on that. My vision for these committees is, you know, standing, maybe quarterly meetings, very directed work from the city council and mayor on projects. We're running to an issue where some of our commissions have subcommittees that have subcommittees. Takes a lot of liaison time, staff time. So I'm gonna try to, it's not just this committee, I love the enthusiasm. People are excited to do work in this awesome town. But we gotta figure out how we put guardrails on it, so it's not, you know, we got basically 18 people running City Hall. I know we have 110 employees, but the 18 people that serve as liaisons and process permits and respond to the public only have so much bandwidth, and we don't have funding to buy more employees to serve committees. So in fact, we're going the opposite direction in the case of Arts Historic, to try to give more bandwidth to our departments. Anyways, that's where I think it's gonna go. We're gonna have a good discussion with the city council. I know there's a whole range of perspectives on the council on this, so if I can just, you know, hold tight in the interim in terms of your subcommittee, hopefully we provide you the information we need and some guidance on where this is probably headed.
And I think we were thinking, to come back to your question, I think we were thinking that we weren't gonna be meeting that
Till we got direction.
till we got directions. Like that committee's just kind of on ice for now, unless Evan, now that he's caught up, has many objections.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Okay, so, is there anything further we want to hear now from, the Development Review Subcommittee? Okay. next up is the intersection subcommittee, including an action item on a proposed recommendation regarding construction of curb ramps. That was in your packet. Jen, were you gonna give a presentation about the intersection subcommittee, or did we determine that anyone had that privilege in particular?
I don't remember. I
Okay,
can try.
if you're willing, go ahead, that'd be great.
Here's no.
Oh.
That's okay.
Yes, it's teamwork. I'm not gonna be very informed on curb ramps. That's kind of more, Molly was our member that was responsible for the research on there. There's some concern that, during, there's kind of a lapse in conformity on that in certain projects in the past time frame, 5-10 years. Where we had curb ramps, for example, on Division, where the ramp goes one direction at a corner, but perhaps doesn't go the other direction. The argument being that there's nowhere to go in the other direction. The counter argument to that would be that, you know, maybe someday there will be something in that other direction, and now our curb would have to be refunded, re-retrofitted, to be able to access the new stuff going on the other side. There's also kind of a consensus among the four of us that, slower turns are better. So kind of wanting to move back towards larger curb radii as much as possible. And I'm going off Molly here, but she said that 12-foot kind of used to be the standard, if I'm
Yeah.
correct.
I was hoping she would be able to explain
Because she was gonna explain this part.
what 12 feet curb radii are, because my understanding of it is minimal. Can you explain it any better?
Well, and Brandon probably knows far better than either of us do, but there's the idea that smaller is required in more urban areas where cars are prioritized. But that a lot of the development that goes on in Sandpoint isn't necessarily urban, like you talk about, you know, more heavily trafficked areas, but in her opinion, with the research she had done, she thought that 12-foot would probably be allowable in almost all city projects. But again, I am not an expert on that. She was hoping to kind of have some discussion on that here so that we could talk about whether the committee would be willing to make a motion to recommend that that be done. And I am not sure that my secondhand spiel right now is enough for us to be able to make a motion. But so we could bring it up again next.
I tend to agree with that. I'm the only other member of that subcommittee that is here. I don't feel like I can explain it well enough to the full committee to provide you with the information to pass an informed motion. So I would rather table it and have it be part of our own unfinished business for our next meeting.
And I'd also love to hear if Brandon has any thoughts on it in the meantime, or if anyone else has any thoughts or has any knowledge to bring that we could. When we punt it, when we punt it, or if we come back to it.
Do you have thoughts, Brandon?
So it's kind of the opposite of what you're saying. So the smaller curb radiuses are better for slowing vehicles down. Smaller curb radius, a larger curb radius makes vehicles go faster, but it accommodates larger vehicles.
I'm sorry, Brandon, maybe you could clarify me what is meant by curb radius?
Thank you, my
They are so useful.
illustrator is going to step in here.
I'm not sure the folks joining remotely will see all this, but
Maybe if you make eye contact with the owl, it might point at you.
there you go. Okay, cool. So, we were just talking about this last night at City Council on the Cedar Street reconstruction. So, this would be an example of a street with, that would be very difficult for a vehicle to turn quickly. You actually have to come and make it 90-degree turn. obviously, that's hard versus a street with a large radius. And I'm not a professional artist. This one you can really whip around as a car. You can see that, like you can take that maybe 15 or 20. So this,
Is
Actually,
considered.
It's the inside of the triangle, so
Yeah.
that's
Oh, okay.
less in degrees, less than 90.
Actually, isn't the
No,
radius
that's-
from the center?
That's 90 up here.
Okay, it's from the
It's
center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so think of it like, we all took geometry, right? So
Well, the other
it was a
part
long
side.
time ago.
Brandon, you'll have to make eye contact with Owl again. Lots of-
Talk at it loud.
Shake your hands.
Wave yours.
How did you get that to work?
Kate, say something.
I think
Okay, so we all know this is, a radius is the distance from the center to the outside of the circle. That's all they're talking about. That's the curb radius. When you have a curb that goes around a corner, this is the curb line. The radius is how big this curve is. So if you have a smaller curb radius, that means that the circle is smaller and the radius is tighter.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
So a large curb radius
Say that in
example
loud,
would
I was
be
trying to explain.
if you went to,
Boyer and Highway 200.
I would use, First Avenue and, Pine Street. Heading south on First Avenue, there, it used to be a highway, so there's a really, really large curb radius there.
Ivano's.
Ivano's, the newer Ivano's. A really small curb radius you'll find all over local streets. So that's a lot more typical when you have two intersecting local streets, they'll have tighter curb radiuses. My other input would be, you know, your role as in this committee is to make recommendations to city council essentially. I would advise not, I'm gonna fight as much as I can not to set specific curb radius numbers in any of our standards, because it's much more complicated than just saying we're gonna make all the curb radiuses 12 feet, because there's a lot of different elements at play, including emergency vehicle access, ability of our plows to clear our streets, constructability, roadway geometry. I mean, that's really in the realm of transportation engineers to decide what the curb radiuses are. But again, you can make recommendations on. I think the goal, and I don't want to speak for Molly, but I'm nearly certain that what the goal is to try to keep the curb radiuses as small as possible while accommodating public. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Anyone else have other thoughts on curb radii at this point? Okay, well, let's put that again in the old unfinished business for the next meeting and revisit it. That may be useful. Next, oh, that was the intersection subcommittee. Yeah, and as part of the intersection subcommittee, I had one other concern. I guess I do have one more thing to say. Brandon, as you're going north on Boyer and you're turning right onto Highway 200, is that a large radius turn there?
Dubs Field corner.
Yeah, right around Smokesmith, opposite Dubs. Because that intersection is the reason I joined this committee. So I have already told you individually that the paint is gone. You can almost see it gone in that, it's not as completely gone in that picture as it's gone now, or cars going south
South and heading west.
and heading west, yeah,
This is a large radius,
yeah. So,
but it's because of the roadway geometry, not because they decided they really wanted a larger.
right, right, and so our hope is some way to make it safer. And I've already suggested individually to you repainting it, and that's that, but there are other things we could do too. Jeremy?
This is not a city intersection.
Okay, so is there nothing we can do about it?
No, there's nothing we can do about it, but it's not something that the city can do unilaterally.
Okay,
We can't just go in and do a capital project and somebody else's right away.
okay. Protocols. What is our protocol for making other suggestions about that intersection?
So for ITD, this is Jeremy Mayor. Myself, with the direction of the city council, and the staff that I manage, are the interface between the city and ITD. We speak to ITD as the city. So in this case, if there were concerns, and there are many on the state highway corridor, for instance, Fifth Avenue, I would love to see, parking on both sides of Fifth Avenue, north of Cedar. That would serve to calm traffic and slow things down, make the street more active. That or curb radius, we interface with them through Brandon or Holly, our public works team. We convey our desires. There are times when they'll respond to us and say, go for it. If you're paying for it, do it with the standards, show us what you're gonna do, and they'll approve it. Other projects are more involved. Sometimes our desires conflict with their adopted approach, but there are AASHTO or Green Book, which are the standards and some of the reference documents they typically follow that provide a little flexibility. In times like that, we interface with them and it's a discussion with the state.
And so if we have a recommendation, do we put it in a motion like this? Or do I just,
Yeah, if you come up with an area, that you're concerned about, that you would like to see the city, take action on, it would be, a motion to recommend to the council that we interface with ITD to address curb rating.
okay, thank you.
That would then be brought to the council or staff liaison report that we get every 2 weeks or every month. And then the council would have to weigh on whether they want to take action to move that forward.
Okay, thanks. That's one of the things I've been confused about, so that's,
Well, that intersection is also listed when we do surveys to the parents. We didn't do one this year because the national survey link kind of went away for safe routes. But that was one that a lot of parents mentioned, is that intersection going over to Washington, for sure.
Yeah, and having said that, I mean, just always keep in mind, that we have numerous discussions ongoing every month with ITD. Everything from when are they adding a turn lane to realignment of Ontario and US 2 to, you know, the lights downtown to the highway and signage. So, there are frequently lots of discussions going on with ITD, at any given time, opportunities to interject an idea. But also times when things are a little tense and we might need to strategize when we're asking for what.
okay.
And I wanna add, I was gonna save this for general comments, but, the thing about ITD goes for all other agencies, I would ask that, this committee doesn't contact other agencies and represent themselves as representing the city of Sandpoint. Your goal really is to make recommendations to council to direct staff to ask for things from other agencies. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
As a private citizen, anyone can obviously contact ITD, but if you're contacting them saying you're, you know, the pedestrian advisory representative, or that you're representing the city of Sandpoint in any way, that's not good.
Okay. Did I see a raised hand? No. Be sure if we want to take comments online on this subcommittee report.
It's to your discretion.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go ahead with the subcommittee reports and keep moving. Any other subcommittee reports? It would be the MTM committee. Does anyone, have we received your notes? Thank you. Is there anything you want to say, update us on how you're doing or what you're up to at the moment?
You just want to read it?
Sure.
Wrote the notes. I'll just say that as a committee, we were looking at downtown phase 3, then like the larger multimodal transportation plan considerations. We're now focusing on that because it's a pressing of an item. It's also, yeah, Pacific City at large is also looking at this topic, so we decided to focus on that. We came up with a plan to write up a list of recommendations and considerations as a subcommittee. We present to this committee. That would go to council.
Sounds great. I'm really glad you are on top of that because it's a lot to be on top of. I appreciate the work y'all are doing. Anyone have questions for the MP people?
I would ask, if, everybody read through those notes and if they had comments about them, or if they were generally in agreement with some of those things stated. Then the other piece of that, I know that we talked a lot, Brandon, just about doing some different temporary options, at First and Bridge intersection, and, seeing how we went about that with the city and the mayor and approval, and he's multitasking over there. So that was one thing is, doing something temporary at First and Bridge and seeing how it actually worked and what responses happened and how we would start to make that happen as a part of the design process. So, and that kind of came up at council when this was presented, but this committee really was engaged with that piece of it.
Yeah, so just a quick update on that project. So early stages, first let's talk about the money. And this is where you all as committee members are a huge benefit because you can convey to your friends, family members, neighbors, factual information. So that phase of infrastructure work is being funded by urban renewal. These are different pots of money. That Southern Urban Renewal District expires in 2029. They receive money as new development occurs downtown in their footprint. That tax increment that they take from the county, the library, all the other taxing entities except for the schools, I believe. They get that, city doesn't get our share, and they redirect those towards projects that are in their plan that the council has approved or that they approved. So that third phase is being funded by urban renewal. It's a long process. If you were here for Cedar and First Ave, those phases, or even all the other phases that have happened downtown, we are going to bring in a design and engineering firm. That request for proposal is being developed and will go out shortly. That entity will come in and basically perform public outreach, public engagement, come up with concepts. It's the sort of typical process for a major capital improvement project where there'll be community meetings, maybe surveys, maybe displays at events in town, but we will gather, incorporate public comment, feedback, revise, bring you in on that as part of it. I guess the long and short, no one really knows what that's going to look like right now. It is literally an oyster for us to, I don't know what that saying is, but can't the world is your oyster, but it's for us to mold, model, and work through. So it's going to be pretty much the only, as I see right now, the only big project that we have funding for. Parking lots, I consider those smaller ones, sewer plant, water infrastructure, but that's really the last big project that I see in the next 2.5 years that I'm there. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting. It's gonna put a bookend on our work downtown and hopefully make the town more functional. Hopefully make traveling between our various blocks and areas easier and safer, and yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Deb, just to respond to your asking whether how the rest of us feel about these suggestions, I just got this when I arrived at the meeting today. And I think so for all of us, yeah, we haven't had a chance to look
Right,
at it. yet.
so I guess that might be, an agenda item for the whole committee to kind of sit down and just brainstorm about what this committee thinks they might want to see, you know, various options, and then make sure that that is kind of goes forward into the beginnings of the design team pieces, and, then we start at the beginning of that instead of trying to come in 3/4 of the way through when a lot of times designs can't be changed. So that might be an item for the whole committee to really look at, so we can all discuss it and kind of, and, you know, there can be more than one option for different things, but what pedestrian and bike would potentially be happy with.
I just need to clarify this then. We have a subcommittee looking at the MTM. And, so we.
Well, this is specifically for just this part of downtown, which is an
Ah.
imminent project that's gonna happen,
Okay.
as the mayor said. So I
Okay.
think, as he said earlier, prioritizing what's actually going to happen. And kind of focusing our committee on that. So MTP has kind of already talked about it a little bit, so then it needs to be coming in front of the main committee so we can all speak to it together. And then maybe send those comments forward about what pedestrian and bike
Would be looking for.
like to see, or looking for general ideas for that. Does that make sense?
Well, I'm gonna ask
But again, we're at the beginning of the
you
design. so-
MTMP people, can you maybe make that the focus of your next meeting, so you help us think about what we would like to do for the work that is imminent? And then the rest of the MTMP you can look at down the road.
That's
Yeah,
kind
that's our-
of, we already did that at our last meeting.
That's our
Oh,
plan. is-
If you see, this reads downtown phase 3 on your notes.
Okay. It does, okay.
Yeah.
Basically, next meeting, we're gonna hash all this out, basically confirm what we want to see as a subcommittee, and bring that in a month from now to this committee.
Okay.
And then hopefully get approval or modify it a bit, say this is what this committee wants to see, and pass it off to city council so they can actually start working on this, pass it off to the firm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just caution you, don't go too deep in the weeds, you know, again, no one knows what this is gonna look like. The council instructed staff to give this, future design engineering consultant some ideas that we pulled out of some of our, adopted and, informal plans, at the city. So it's gonna be fun to see what they come up with. Who knows what they're gonna come up with, but if you go too deep now, it might limit yourself and limit to, you know, your response to what they come up with, but I think some high level priorities for the area, how it functions is totally worth spending your time on.
Okay, Brandon, do you want to say something?
Nope.
Okay. All right, I think we need to move on because we're bogged down in subcommittees here, and I think I will take the liberty of just giving a brief report about the events subcommittee, which I'm on. We looked at doing a number of things, maybe having a bike to work day associated with bike to school day, and getting businesses involved, and ended up deciding that we were in a little over our heads with that. And meanwhile, we heard from
Emily at
Thank you.
Padre Peddlers.
and she's coming to our next meeting to tell us about,
They're already planning some sort of bike to work thing. So she's gonna bring her ideas to us, where some businesses have already contacted them. They were gonna do like a award or trophy. I don't know, I believe it's for the whole month of May, but she's gonna tell us what she's gonna do.
so we're meeting next Tuesday morning, the event subcommittee with her, and we're going to think maybe ways that we could piggyback on that event and have pet bike involved in that. So that's the events subcommittee in a nutshell. I would really like to roll it forward. We have half an hour left for a couple of presentations.
Well, just to be clear, I'm sure, we just talked about the last item for 20 minutes, so do
Yeah.
we wanna take that off the agenda?
The Fourth Avenue sidewalk project,
No, phase
Yeah,
3
yeah,
downtown,
yeah.
that's what we were just discussing.
I'm sorry, I'm lost in the
Number 8.
Number 8.
debate. Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So,
So we do have, I just wanna
I
point
see,
out that we do
okay,
have a little bit of
okay.
time if you wanna continue
Right.
talking about.
okay. So you were gonna make a presentation about that? Do you still want to, or have we already covered what you were going to cover?
I can't, yeah,
So,
Sorry, Brandon.
no, that's all right, I think that we just have more time,
okay, that's good to know.
but let's move on to.
Yeah, let's
Fourth
move on to Fourth Avenue, and then if we have time for your presentation about downtown, that will be helpful too. So, next is the staff presentation on the Fourth Avenue sidewalk project, and I will yield the floor to Brandon.
Okay, back to the GIS map. All right, so we do not have, I don't think we even have any concepts or drawings for what we want to do for this project. And I don't know, necessarily when it's gonna happen. We're very early in it, in the process. But basically, Fourth Avenue, between roughly, I'd say Superior, Lake Street, all the way down to Pacific, was identified and placed into our, multi-year capital improvements plan. As something, I believe it was adopted by council, although I wasn't here. But, I think it was with direction from council that we add these, projects to our budgeted items every fiscal year. So we've identified a Fourth Avenue sidewalk project, but, we don't really have a lot of the details, so that's why I'm bringing it here for discussion. Something to think about as we move forward on it. I believe the discussion so far was maybe to do sidewalk on the east side of Fourth Avenue. Between, say, Superior and Pacific. And possibly continue the sidewalk to connect here. You can see where my cursor is right now, so that we can get connectivity to get to Third Street here. But my suggestion would be for committee members maybe to walk that stretch, take some pictures, take some notes. Maybe direct staff to add that to a future agenda item and present recommendations. Maybe a discussion item for another meeting, and then if that goes well, maybe agendize it as something you can formally adopt and make a set of recommendations to council on.
Brandon, did you say from Lake or from Superior?
Both.
You did.
Cause
say
I'm not really
both.
sure,
Okay.
cause I'm not really sure where those limits of it, it's gonna be. Dependent
Well,
on,
from Lake, there's,
there's sidewalk from Lake, so this is Lake, east side, there's sidewalk.
right,
There's basically sidewalk on the west side of Fourth all the way. It kind of stops right here just south of Superior. So I believe the preliminary thought was tie in here, build sidewalk, we've got some sidewalks to nowhere that we can tie into if they're still in good shape. There's another section that we tie into, but kind of complete, but fill in the gaps on the east side.
first question for you would be, without walking that stretch, and something for the committee to think about is that's right curb line sidewalk in a lot of those places. So would we be changing the street width there? Cause that's some challenging fall away lots along there, cause it's right on the edge of the hill. So those are just things to think about when you're walking. I don't wanna take a lot of time, Brandon, but you know what I'm talking about, like, are those duplexes that are that gets into the whole plowing thing, because then they plow it on the sidewalk. So,
Yeah, I don't know if we've gotten that far to decide whether we're gonna move the curb line. I didn't hear any discussion of that yet, but.
okay, yeah, cause that's definitely sidewalk on the curb, so we wanna put that in our thought process.
So you can see here on the GIS, here's a good example. This is Superior and Fourth, and it's, you know, a house that kind of drops off, like you're saying.
Right.
It's got, the existing sidewalk, for whatever reason, it wasn't built all the way to the outside of the right of way. This yellow line here is the right of way. So we do have room to build sidewalk and still have a planter strip in between the sidewalk.
And the right of way goes through that house that's just a little bit.
It's
Almost through the roof.
pretty much a zero setback right here. There's a patio out front of the house, so it doesn't quite go through the building itself. but-
Right, anyway, so yeah, that's the existing, but the other stuff further down. Okay, so interesting. thought.
Did I mishear what the funding is for this project? Isn't the homeowners usually have to pay for sidewalks?
Yeah, so that's the, we passed a local option tax a few years ago where we identified specific projects. That's where the funding would come from.
Okay, so this was a priority from several years back. And we're,
Yeah, it's not something we just identified this year.
Okay.
It's been in the works since before I was in a city engineer.
and it's paid for by the local option tax? You have to pay for it, or?
Right, so you're required to pay for sidewalk as a condition of building permit when you build a new house or you do a remodel or an addition or an EDU.
Mhm.
And then the other way that sidewalk gets built is the city does city and, you know, city funded projects.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, that's just the downside of that funding mechanism is that you can kind of piggyback off that if you decide to take out a building permit and you live next to one of those streets where the city does the sidewalk project,
Mhm.
you're not required to provide that. So if you already have sidewalk that meets ADA in front of your house, you don't have to rip it up and replace it
Okay,
in order to do a building permit.
but this one, it sounds like is being paid for by the city, not by the homeowners. None of them is planning a remodel or something.
That's correct.
Okay. So what you want from us is for us to walk that, see if we have suggestions, and maybe we put that in another old business agenda item for our next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I can put a placeholder on it for the next meeting.
Okay,
Brandon, as, sounds, so is there a set budget for this project? Do we need to be considering financial implications as we think about recommendations for this? Or is it more our input is put the lens on just forget money for a second? We'll assume budget's solved in the background. We're just looking for pedestrian and biking best practices along this corridor within reason based on our observation.
I would say you need to consider financial implications only so far as to realize that we don't have an unlimited budget on any of these projects.
Is there
So really what we're looking for is what are the priorities from this committee? What are the things that you definitely want to make sure gets done before anything else? That's kind of where we're going.
is there funding allocated for this project specifically, or is this
Yes.
actually, so we wouldn't, you're not pulling from another potential project to fund this? There's some pool of money dedicated to Fourth Street
Yes,
and, okay. And we don't know exactly what that is, but we basically need to come up with our list and then just priority rank it, and then that'll be the recommendation that will kind of move forward.
yeah, kind of leave it to you and it's, you know, your committee. I mean, figure out how you want to present recommendations to city council, what form that takes is kind of up to you.
any other thoughts on Fourth Avenue?
Question, why does it not go all the way to state?
Oh, to Pine Street.
Yeah.
So we have existing sidewalk from Superior to Pine Street already and much, well, not all of it, but that's, my guess is that's the reason why it was identified with that scope.
If we walk that section and feel like there are small things, is
Yes,
that available to be tacked onto that?
yeah, it would be totally appropriate for this committee to make a recommendation, hey, consider changing the scope, removing the scope.
So we can feel free to walk that section. And
Yeah.
It's fine then, okay.
Then there's our last item of new business, which is the staff presentation on phase 3 of downtown revitalization. I know we've already gone over this it would help me to have a little more context, and Brandon, if you could pull up the map or the overhead and show us the limits of that and maybe give us a sense of what we're gonna be talking about when we're considering the recommendations from our MTMP subcommittee.
You bet. Okay, so this is the intersection we're talking about. We all know about it, Bridge and First. It's kind of a weird intersection. I'll show you some drawings here in a second. That'll provide more context, but really the project as a whole is what we call phase 3 downtown, and it's not just at this intersection. It is, you know, starting at this intersection and going at least to Pine Street, possibly to Lake or beyond, depending on funding. We just don't know yet. Ideally, I would love to continue it all the way down to Superior and out to the Long Bridge, but you know, there are budget implications. But anyway, think of it in that context. We're really continuing what was already done in the other parts of downtown. This is kind of the last phase of that project. That's why we're calling it phase 3 downtown. So we don't have to do exactly what we did on the other phases, but the intent was to continue that general idea further down to the Lisa Pine. So I'm going to switch my screen here.
Maybe you could elaborate on what you mean by general idea. Are we talking about the bulb outs and the stormwater treatments like have appeared in other areas of downtown over the last 6, 7, 10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
There's further water structure underground that.
Yes, there will be utility replacement as part of this project, regardless of what we do. But that will also be determined based on, you know, the scope of the surface improvements that we want to do. So these are, this was presented at city council last week. These two drawings here are really the two concepts that have been adopted by city council up to this point for this intersection. So the one on the left is from the multimodal transportation master plan, and the one on the right was from the more recent downtown design competition. The approved report team, their final report included a similar but slightly different concept, which is on the right side of the page. So, we you know, talked about this quite a bit, but like Mayor Grimm said, we don't have to do either one of these concepts. We can do something completely different. The attempt or the goal of staff on this one was to get it in front of the public really early and get input before we even engaged with a design firm to provide further design on this project. Really try to get public input, and that's where this committee comes in. So again, I don't know what form it would take to provide recommendations for this project. Whether it's discussion and then coming up with an agreed on set of list of items that are priorities that the committee would like to see.
I'm wondering if, Mayor Grimm was talking about protocols, if some of this will become more clear over the next month or two as he zeroes in on what committees and subcommittees are gonna be doing, but.
Yeah. It will be.
Yeah.
Yes,
so-
it will. And I'll just say, I mean, part of me, there's a lot of building frustration on committee members, myself, staff time, budget constraints. Part of me wants to almost say pause until we can figure it out, pause all committees for 2 months and let us see what we've learned and what we need to do better. But I think, I don't want to do that. But for the purpose of this, I think you're gonna see a lot coming through once we get this designer and engineer on board. I think they'll probably come to you and ask for your specific, maybe they'll even do a presentation to you and have you part of the community, subcommittee that will work on this. There'll be a business group probably involved. There'll be various interest involved in this, so. Yeah, it's gonna be standardized. These big projects are one-offs. And this is pretty much the only big one coming through, sewer plant hopefully, but. Yeah, we're gonna make it work really well.
Okay, so for us, right now, we're gonna familiarize ourselves with what our subcommittee shows us, and then we will await instructions as to how best to provide input.
Can I just add one more thing?
Please.
So as Councilwoman roll into that, this, what you see up here was also from the multimodal transportation master plan, but this is kind of a long-term concept that involves potentially blocking vehicle traffic between Bridge and Church here and creating a pedestrian plaza. So that, as you can see, the big watermark on there, that as of now is not really being considered to be within the scope of this phase 3 project. Although that's not to say that it won't become, but as of now, it is not part of the scope, but it's kind of a long-term concept. So that would also be a good thing for this committee to provide comment on, is the benefits of potentially giving back some of that space to pedestrians and bicyclists.
So that was the temporary thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, so that's, that was there was some discussion about potentially trying this out with temporary traffic control so that it could be maybe seasonal, like we block this off in the summer when there's a lot of traffic, and then after the tourists leave, we can remove some of that stuff and just bring it back to the way it was when there's a lot less traffic.
Or even a day or a weekend was also discussed.
And this is the one where you essentially can't get to City Beach from the north.
You just have to go around.
Yeah, okay.
Which I think is a good thing, because we did that with the high school, middle school before we did that, and found out that yes, we need the turn lane. So doing a temporary thing for even a weekend or something, provides you input, like that's not gonna work at all. Or like they did with the high school. It wasn't gonna work without that turn lane going into the middle school, high school on Division. After day 1, they said, never mind, we're putting that back.
Okay.
And do you, just since you're still going, Brandon, if you don't mind, could you have the other pictures of the further down, just a quick, just splash form of, yeah, the bigger one, just to kind of give the scope of the area. And then, this one, just what I really want to point out is, all the way down to Superior, which is where the strange flashing light is. This concept had the roundabout in it. There are some other older drawings from the transportation plan previous to the one we have now that had a roundabout in that intersection. And what I guess I want to throw out there to the pedestrian committee is that section from Superior where the crazy intersection is all the way up to Pine. That road's no longer highway. You do get off the on-ramp, but as soon as you're off the on-ramp, those are Sandpoint streets. So we can take them back down to the capacity of a more connecting type of street. So whether we have the money to do the entire distance, probably not. But I just want you to think through some of those things so that your thought process is, oh, you can go all the way to Superior, and those streets would look very similar from what Cedar Street in front of Icarts and IPA and all those places look like now. So just to kind of get your wheels turning, you might want to go walk that whole section of downtown and visualize and try to, as your own personal design process and what you'd want to see or bring to the committee, that eventually will all get sucked down the design path that the mayor was talking about. Because there could be more on-street parking down there and different things to access community hall, et cetera, so on. So just thought. Thank you for pulling this up, Brandon.
Yeah, the section you're referring to, I've got it open here on the GIS. Curb to curb we have, say, 36 feet of pavement. So that means that we're giving this turn lane here that's extended through, its own 12-foot lane, and then we're giving 12-foot lanes on either side. So there may be the opportunity to shrink those lanes a little bit now that it's not a highway, and give some of that space back to boulevard, planting strips for stormwater, bike lanes, wider sidewalks, tree wells.
What's the right of way? The right of way is like 60 there?
Right away is 60 right here.
As we're walking and brainstorming, any work on what's happening with the pit at the corner of the bridge?
No movement on that yet. However, we are moving forward with a separate project, separate from phase 3 downtown. We are working with a structural engineer right now to design a wall. The orange line here is the city right of way, which we extended several years ago as part of a land swap. You can see this squiggly line here, that's the sheet pile that they installed. And it's inside of our right of way. So there was money set aside by this private developer to fill in and move this wall essentially to the outside of the right of way by this sidewalk. So we are right now trying to come up with a design to basically add we're gonna gain maybe 10 to 12 feet of additional sidewalk then.
And that's gonna maybe happen this summer.
Possibly, yeah.
And someone else is gonna pay for it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
primarily. I mean,
Yeah.
we won't know till the design's done. We have an engineer's estimate, then we've got to bring it to council, I think, and figure out what we're gonna do. But I wanted to highlight, so we're basically talking about filling in this area right here.
With nothing being done on the west side as of yet.
Not right now, but
We're sorry.
I'm hoping that we can include that as part of the phase 3 downtown project.
Oh,
The reason for focusing on this, as y'all probably can guess, is this part right here is a huge pinch point. You walk down there in the summer, there's basically kids walking out, stepping off the sidewalk onto the street because there's not enough room. So we're really trying to fix that here.
And I'd add that I really wanted to do that before the summer season, but we got an engineering report saying it's a little bit wet. And the cost to de-water it is extraordinary, so they said, well, wait till it's dry in June, July, could prefer not to have the work occurring in the middle of hotel demolition and summer tourist season. So we basically made the decision to put it off until September. So it's unfortunate we can't get it before the busy season, but it's just the reality of the wetness there and trying to balance conflicts and other projects going on in the area.
And I'd like to pull us back to our agenda. We have about 10 minutes left. Is that hand still up? Rebecca, are you still out there wanting to talk? Okay, I guess. Rebecca?
Yeah, just very quickly, when you mentioned the Boyer Highway 2 thing, it reminded me of something that, that being a big project, however, committee used to, years ago, have a real fast wish list that was put together by Bike Ped. And that was at the invitation of Cody Van Dyke, who was the Public Works Director at the time. And the committee created a wish list of things that were small projects. So as you said, like paint on the street and things that you had mentioned there, or but not big design items. That might be something your committee might like to everybody do, and it's not a subcommittee deal. It's just a basic wish list that goes to the city in the spring. And then in your minutes, council would see that and would see some projection. Just a thought to pass on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, I would say that's a great idea. In fact, hats off to Ms. Holland. I believe it was on Oak that she recommended we throw some green paint on there. And she just contacted me directly. I mentioned it to Brandon. So sometimes there are those neat opportunities where we have bandwidth or a little bit of money to do something cool, so where needed. Yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, thanks. So do we have any other general announcements or comments? Anything else anyone wishes to say at this time? Did you want to say something, Deb?
Just to piggyback on what Rebecca said, that might be an agenda item for our next meeting, where each individual bike ped committee member can just go look for what we used to call at the POP meetings, the low hanging fruit. Go figure out something that's really cheap and doable for the city, but may make a pretty big difference, in anywhere you walk or bike in town. You know, maybe your Sharrow or something is mispainted and you want it to be in a better place on the road. Those are some easier things that can get worked in and not break budget.
Or even crosswalk signs. They did that for us right by Farman where there was one, cars weren't stopping. So just making that crosswalk more visible, just with the simple signs that didn't cost too much. They put those. in.
That's great. I know all kinds of ideas. All right, anything further? No,
Madam Chairman.
yeah, are you?
I'm Donna Griffin, I'm with Fox Bus, Selkirk Metro Transit.
Oh,
So I
okay.
just wanted to learn more about the committees and the subcommittees. And I appreciate the opportunity to sit in on all this, everything that's going on. And also offer with the multimodal transportation plan, we're mentioned in it quite a few times. Included in any way, we're always here to help with that transportation solution piece, right? And just to give an example of our impact for fixed routes in Bonner County. We provided 62,000 rides for our fixed route, the blue and the green route with our paratransit just in 1 year last year. And over 2 years, that increased by 20,000 rides. And so, just with that opportunity to share that, and with all the new developments of the projects that are going on, and provide that we are an existing service with a pretty great resource to provide all those rides, and also offer that we're here to help with the transportation solutions. So I appreciate the opportunity to say hi and introduce myself for those of you who don't know. Okay, if there's any questions, call me.
Did you get her name? Can we have that in the record? Donna.
Donna Griffin, G-R-I-F-I-N.
Thank you. Okay,
And I'm the Spot Bus executive.
thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, I think, I'm just really impressed we got through this whole agenda. I appreciate everybody being succinct and to the point and listening carefully. I hope we can keep it up for every meeting forever after. For now, I'm gonna adjourn this one. No further business on the agenda. This meeting is now adjourned at it's either 12:54 or 12:59 PM.
It's 54.